Go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Inform Forum, or thank you for watching. I am here with Senate candidate in Kentucky, Stephen Cox. He's one of two people now that is running against Mitch McConnell, and we need to get Mitch McConnell out of office for all of the obvious reasons, but it would be really, really great if we could get Mitch McConnell out and a progressive in. Because if you look at what's happened in the House with 4 progressives alone, imagine what we could do with the Senate if we got even just one in. So I'll allow him to introduce himself. So, who are you?
I am Stephen Cox, running for U.S. Senate, obviously. I'm a progressive candidate. I was born and raised in Kentucky. I'm actually originally from a small town called Bremen. I doubt anybody's heard of it. We do have a parade, but it's basically one street parade and then it's over.
Okay.
Yeah. I come from a really rural area.
Okay. Yeah. For those of us that are not familiar with Kentucky, which I would assume that a lot of people aren't, unless they live in Kentucky.
Right.
We appreciate that name because at least we can find it on a map.
I'd say 2 hours west of Louisville. That's the best way to put it.
Okay.
It's a very long state.
Okay, yeah, I know it's wide, I think. I'm going back to like my 3rd or 4th grade history class. Or you know how elementary school was with all that stuff. But, so I'm glad to hear that you're a progressive candidate. Now, I think that word often now, unfortunately, gets kind of muddied.
Yeah.
It's almost as if now everyone running for everything is claiming they're progressive. Or you like to hear the words pragmatic progressive, which is just code for centrist. I think. But so I guess my first question is what 2 things. It's kind of a 2-part question. What does progressive mean to you, and what makes you progressive?
To me, progressive means looking at all the issues we have going on and to actually finding a solution that moves us forward. What makes me progressive is I don't just look at the ideas and say, yes, I agree with that idea. I try to find new ideas. I try to find new ways we can move forward.
Okay. Let me ask a pointed question.
Yes.
I think one thing that, at least to me, that's important when you are thinking of a progressive candidate is it's almost regardless of their positions, almost. I say almost with a huge caveat there, is their willingness to not take corporate PAC money and to take small dollar donations only, or to take union PAC money and smaller donations only. How are you fundraising for your campaign? Like what?
Well, there's no corporate PAC money. There's no dark money. I don't want to be held to anything that they want. I'm for the people, by the people.
Okay. I am so happy to hear that, because the first answer I was like, what road we going down here? Don't really know if I'm liking what I'm hearing yet, but I'm glad you said that, because to me, even if someone, to me, if I was a Kentuckian, which I am not, I would want to vote for someone almost regardless of the issues, as long as they weren't bought, because at least then, I know they'd be more willing to listen to their constituents, because they would literally be relying on them for their reelection.
Absolutely.
And I think that point gets a bit forgotten sometimes. But okay, so a few kind of hot topic things that I'm gonna go into like a few things. So I think nationally, it's fair to say that women's rights and trans rights and LGBT rights are kind of completely under attack. And I don't think that. I mean, I'm personally pro-choice, but that being said, I'm curious where you stand on like a woman's rights to choose or just LGBT rights in general and allowing them to go to the military, for instance, which you might not really have control over.
Right. Well, I consider myself pro-life, and that is what I would choose for myself. I also support the Constitution. And what that means is I think people have life and liberty as a right to make their own decisions. Um, I think a lot of times the pro-choice, pro-life, the two sides, they sort of smash into each other, and there's a lot of fighting. But really, when it gets down to it, if we're just reasonable with one another, and I live my life and I allow you to live yours and make the decisions for your family that you want, I mean, I think that's the best way to go. As far as trans rights, LGBTQ community, I have always supported them. I have went to Pride events in my local area. I actually helped get in Madisonville, Kentucky, the first lesbian city council member elected.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm very pro people and pro people's voice. I might have opinions of my own, but the important part is to realize that everyone can have their own opinion. We don't have to agree. That's what makes America great.
Okay.
I'm never going to support anything that takes away anybody's right to choose or any right to anything. I mean, those rights, even if I don't agree with them, are rights. It's constitutionally backed.
Okay. So I guess like suppose something were to be proposed in the Senate if you're elected relating to a 20-week abortion ban or a 12-week abortion ban. What would you do, like as someone that is pro-life? Because for me, I live in Pennsylvania, and my senator
Right.
is Bob Casey. He has actually voted for them, even though he has said like I would never do something like that. So he's kind of a little bit of a shit stick. So I guess what would you do in that instance?
In that instance, I would not support any sort of abortion ban at all.
Okay.
I mean, that infringes upon constitutional rights.
Cool. So basically, you wouldn't let your personal. You're kind of in a sense like.
It's sort of like you
Wouldn't
remember
let your.
the people that used to, be upset because people would burn the American flag, and then there would be people that would say, "Well, I don't like that you're burning the American flag, but people died for your right to burn that flag." I mean, that's kind of where I stand. People have died for everyone to have the right to life and liberty. Even if they don't follow my opinion, I still have to protect their rights to life and liberty.
Okay, cool. No, I like that because I think at least what it reminds me of, and I could be kind of remembering this incorrectly, but several years ago, when I was a lot-ish younger, I'm almost 30, so I say a lot-ish with the caveat because I don't want to be 30 yet.
You're still young.
Yeah, but not that young. But it's kind of like I think like so many years ago, Tulsi Gabbard had like views against the LGBT community that were not so great. But I think she said she would never let her personal positions, she would never let her personal feelings toward the community erode the rights of people in that community. So it's kind of
I
like
mean,
that. Like,
that's a very important stance. It's a way for people to say, yes, I have my own person and I stick true to my own beliefs for my life, but everybody has a right to their own life and their own decisions.
right.
I
Cool.
mean, that's really what the country was founded upon.
No, that's
Everybody has different opinions, but the diversity is our strength. If we all had the same mind about things, then I mean, nothing would get done. Nothing good
yeah,
at least.
that's almost exactly what the country was founded on. I mean, I think it's interesting. I'm actually learning a little bit about the founding fathers only because I work at a historical church in Philadelphia where 7 of the founding fathers were actually buried.
That is awesome.
Um, like on a side note, Dr. Benjamin Rush, he actually believed in Medicare for all. So that could be another question, but I think this is fairly. I think I know the answer to this because it's on your website, which I have not looked at all. But do you support Medicare for all?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's super important to me, especially given what's happening in Philadelphia today. Um, you may not know, but Hahnemann Hospital is actually being privatized because it's not making profit. So it's set to close in September and become condominiums.
That is very sad.
Yeah, it's
As a culture, we have to move away from for profit and get back to for care.
we really, really do because I mean, even for me, listening to some of the stories of the people that were there, it's so sad. Like some of these people, they don't have money. That hospital serves low income people, and now they're kicking people out
Yeah.
because they can't make money off of them.
I mean, I've heard of people dying because they were poor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recall the exact situation, but I was talking to a nurse at the fair recently that was going on. And she was telling me about a lady that had a medical device lent to her by the hospital, and she couldn't afford it. So they said, okay, you can have the device for as long as there's no one that actually has insurance and can pay for the device. But the moment that someone can pay for the device, we're going to have to take it from her. And
Right.
that device was keeping her alive. Well, someone with adequate insurance did come up. And so they had to take that away from her, and the lady died.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But we need to protect private insurance, says Elizabeth Warren.
I mean, private insurance can still exist, and they can, add on riders or anything that they want to do. But when it comes down to people, the system shouldn't be for profit. I mean, it doesn't focus on care. It doesn't focus on getting better or wellness. It focuses on money.
Yeah, and I mean, it really doesn't. It just kind of puts a tiny little band-aid on a bigger issue.
Absolutely.
So I guess, like, if you were elected to the Senate, you would immediately sign on to, I guess, if he's still in the Senate, Sanders' Medicare for All bill.
Yes, I would. I would want to look at the formulary agreement in there, but otherwise, yeah, I think it's pretty solid.
Can you talk about the formulary agreement? Because I'm actually not that familiar with that.
Okay, well, basically, your formularies are a group of people, usually they're doctors or pharmacists, that say these are the group of drugs that we want to support with this plan. They're the low cost, or they are the adequate care. I would want to see what the formularies were picking these drugs for before I can fully sign on to having a formulary.
Okay.
because big insurance companies, a formulary usually is used to save money,
Mm-hmm.
and that goes into like step care. So that way, the formulary will say, okay, you've got X illness, so we're going to start you with X treatment. Even if the doctor prescribed a different treatment, you need to at least do this first because it's the cheapest. Let's see if that works. And if that doesn't work, we've got the next cheapest. And if that doesn't work, the next cheapest. And eventually we'll get to the plan your doctor said was great for you, but first we're going to go the cheap option. So formularies can be a really good thing and a really bad thing. I really want to see what that formulary had in mind.
Okay, so it's kind of about the way it could be rolled out.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay. Interesting. So it's kind of like how universal basic income can be a good thing, but also a really shitty thing.
Right.
That makes sense. I think that's a very principled decision or wording. Decision? I'm not sure. But that's a very principled way to state it, is what I'm really trying to say. Trying to go down the market list of like topics to like think about. I should have these all prepared, but I feel like I live in so many political circles that I just know this shit backwards and forwards.
Right.
So, okay. The climate crisis, and more so supporting something like the OFF Act or the Green New Deal. There's something that I've actually continuously heard from sitting representatives in the House in the PA, Southeastern Pennsylvania district, is that their reason for not supporting something like the Green New Deal is it's just a resolution. And resolutions don't do anything. They just put forward initiatives to say, we're going to do this and we're going to do good things and we're going to be doing good things against bad things, right? But they're not willing to support it because it's just a resolution. If you're elected to the Senate, what would you do to kind of, I think it's safe to say we cannot stop the climate crisis. It's going to happen. I do think that we could stall it. So I guess I'll phrase the question like, what would you do to kind of stall the climate crisis?
Yeah. To be honest, this was the main issue that got me into politics.
Okay.
I research a lot. I don't know if you've ever went to, say, Wikipedia when you've been interested in something and then just fell down a rabbit hole of different, things. But what I found is that the climate crisis is real, and it scares the hell out of me.
Mm-hmm.
We've got about 15 years to really make a difference and do something about it, or after that 15 years, we're basically just going to be waiting around to die. And that's the whole planet. That's all life on the planet. And I don't understand why people aren't doing something. And even if it is, a very big something, so what? I mean, we have to do something or we die. It's not
Mm-hmm.
It's not hard to think, okay, we do something or we die. That's an easy choice. We do something.
Right. And it kind of reminds me of, so I think everyone knows what happened to the Cathedral of Notre Dame, right? With it bursting up in flames, essentially. Just because they didn't institute a sprinkler system or something to kind of combat this happening. But had they would have saved money. They would have done a lot of good things to combat bad things. It's almost like doing good things combats the bad things.
Right. And a lot of people say that we'll lose money if we actually, try to do something about climate change. It'll open jobs up. I mean, there is nothing to be lost in going down this avenue. And we're creating clean energy, lowering the carbon footprint. All that's going to happen eventually. Why doesn't it happen right now? And that will make us the starting point for all these different industries that could open up, start a third industrial revolution. And that has to happen. I mean, as Americans growing up, we always think, America, number one.
Right.
We're the heroes of the world. We're the people that are going to go in there and do things. But we're just sitting and doing nothing right now. And if we really want to be that, hero, then we can go out and we can do these things and we can profit from it even. We can make money saving the world. It's a no-brainer.
See, now you're sending me down a rabbit hole of foreign policy like-minded questions in my mind. So I thank you for using certain words in your answer just then. Foreign policy is such a difficult area to tackle because I think it's very complicated. And for so many Americans, there's like you said, we like to think we're the heroes of the world, right?
Yeah.
That's not exactly the case that I find. So I'm trying to phrase this question.
Well, while we were out trying to be the heroes, the people that were out trying to make money sort of pushed the point in a really bad direction, which was let's make money by any means necessary. And that's the basis of, current capitalism. It's not sustainable.
Right. And I guess the way that I see it is foreign policy and the immigration crisis are actually directly linked. So this is kind of a two-part question. I think actually, I don't live in Kentucky, so I don't know, but I think it might be very important for Kentuckians to kind of have knowledge of what you would do to so-called deal with the immigration crisis. I put that in quotes because I feel like I shouldn't be saying those words in that way. But what would you do about the immigration crisis at the border, and really just within your state, in various places? So that would mean like concentration camps. Let's just call them what they are.
Okay.
And what would you do to, like, I think we are basically, we're giving Saudi Arabia money, right? We're giving them money to basically finance the war in Yemen, to basically starve Yemen out. So I guess the question is, how would you get bad shit to stop happening, as far as foreign policy, as far as ICE, as far as things that create the immigration, create this influx of refugees because of our bad foreign policy choices?
Okay. If you look in history, you'll see that we used Guam really effectively as sort of a layover to citizenship, where people could be in Guam. Guam is a U.S. territory.
Right.
And that gave them the ability to be there, work jobs, get their, forms and paperwork together, and then put that forward to the government and hopefully, gain citizenship. I think that we should honestly get an area. Oh, excuse me. Sorry.
Fine.
We need to make an area much like that, a holdover area, an area where they can work and get things together. It doesn't have to be a concentration camp at all. If if people are worried about them being in the U.S., and this is immigrants, not asylum seekers,
Right.
have a middle ground or a middle zone where they can get these things together and they can move forward with the process. That would be the way I would want to approach that. You look at the way, Guam was handled. A lot of those people, if they would have, obviously, if they would have entered into the U.S., they would have been undocumented. But they got to Guam, and Guam was where they started putting their cases together and developing a plan on how they would get citizenship and how they would be of use to society and how they could benefit, as well as having a benefit from, coming to the U.S.
Okay. So let's talk about regime change wars.
Mhm.
And let's talk about oil. So would you sign a, I'm trying to, apparently today is my ultra awkward day.
That's okay.
If a bill came across your desk to enter into war with India, for instance, to get rid of Modi, for instance, would you sign it? And obviously, this is assuming we don't have a lovely president in office named Trump.
Right.
Who would just go to war, or someone else that I think would just go to war, like Elizabeth Warren.
Honestly, I think at this stage of, human civilization, I don't understand why we need to pivot back to war each time. I mean, we obviously have a one world economy. Mm-hmm. We have vested interests with each other. There's no reason why we can't sit down and actually talk about what it is we want to happen and what needs to happen. Foreign policy, a lot of it fails in the way that other nations aren't going to trust us. They just aren't.
Right.
I mean, it's like if you were camping, out in the wilderness in a lawless land, and another camp formed near you, would you trust them? If they said they were nice, you'd have your reservations about it. But you could attack them, yes, but you could both mutually benefit if you were just open and honest and completely transparent about what was going on and what we needed from each other.
Right. It's almost like talking with people and acts of diplomacy and peace could actually get the good things to happen.
It honestly, it can. Mutualism is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's why there's a word for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was a really good answer. I love that answer. Because with all this weird stuff that's, I think there's another country now, maybe China? I don't know. Like, we don't need, in my mind, and this actually could, so this is leading me down a little bit of another question, which has to come down to economics. And so I don't know if you've seen graphs of the budget and the US budget and things like that and what's spent on what. If you look at it, you'll basically see that the military budget is gargantuan.
Yes, it's insane.
Yeah. So
more than the next 12 nations combined on a military budget. But we don't have health care for our troops and our veterans. Something's not right there.
Yeah, it's
all that money really goes into the manufacture of weapons and arms deals and trade deals. It doesn't go into our actual troops. If that money is going into our troops, that would be a wonderful thing, but it's just not. It's going into for-profit, weaponized, agendas.
Right. Which, I mean, it kills people in those countries. And then you wonder why people are fleeing those countries to come here. But I really don't wonder. I know.
Right.
And it honestly sounds like you do too. So I like to hear that you at least know how ridiculous the military budget is and how the money is being allocated in the budget.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, if we're spending more than the next 12 nations combined and we're not taking care of our troops, the money's not going to the right places anyway. That budget is being heavily fed into and not used appropriately at all.
Right. So I guess, how would you like to see, I guess, it sounds like to me in your answer, you'd like to see more money go to veterans, which I would too. I can't tell you. I take 2 trains to get to work. I see so many homeless veterans, and it breaks my goddamn heart. I see so many homeless people just right outside my job, and it breaks my heart. But
I've never saw homeless people until these last few years, and it was surprising because even in rural America, we're starting to get homeless people now.
Yeah, and
it's a real thing.
Yeah, and that's actually crazy to think about, because I think for people like myself that live in basically more or less a coastal city, like, it's pretty standard, unfortunately, to see them. But when I think of an affordable place to live, I do think of a place like Kentucky or Wisconsin or, I don't know, North Dakota. I can't think of many places because I kind of just fly over states. Sorry. But how would you like to see the military budget allocated? And I think it's fair to say a lot of social programs are not really funded well. So what would you like to see as far as the US budget? Like, if you were to craft the most amazing budget and have the luxury to vote on it, what would be your ideal situation or ideal piece of legislation?
I would take the military from a point of expansion and roll it back to a point of upkeep. Keep what we have, support that. That excess budget that would take out, put that back into the troops, back into their health care and the veterans' health care, so they actually, have care. I live pretty close to a VA facility.
Okay.
And a lot of the cuts that have come down at a, state level and a federal level have affected them. So, these veterans are paying in to live there, with their insurance.
Yeah.
And less people are working there because they don't have the staff. They don't give the staff hours and staff money. So they're paying more for less care than they did 5 years ago. And it's not right.
No.
But, back to the, the heart of the budget issue. There is a very large budget for our nation. And if we were to put it in places that would actually be for the people and for a growth-focused economy and a growth-focused nation that was doing something about climate change, we would be unstoppable.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we have to get toward that mentality of we, because there's so many people that are in those positions that are just interested in I, and they want to make money for themselves and fund their own interests. But if you are interested in the interests of the world, then that's a wonderful thing,
Right. And I mean, the reality is, like, Right. Yeah, exactly. Like the reality is a lot of these people, not to sound ageist, because I'm not. I mean, I support Senator Sanders for president, so I literally cannot be ageist. But the man, and now I'm totally losing my point. But I guess what I'm trying to say is a lot of these people that are in the Senate and the House, a lot of them are just old.
Yeah.
Old white men or old white women. Maybe an older person of color, but
I mean, culturally speaking, a lot of the older people, they were brought up in a very different culture than what younger people were brought up in. The values were different, the way they were taught.
And the
I mean, I
social
know it's kind of
programs,
hokey, but
right?
like Saturday morning cartoons, when you watch those when you're a kid, they're like, do the right thing, don't do drugs, everybody's equal, be
Right.
happy, be safe. That gets drilled into the kids, and it has been since the 80s. And, the
Right.
millennials are growing up now and they're like, we want to do the right thing. And, a lot of people don't understand that, but I don't
Yeah.
understand why they don't.
Exactly. And it's hard, I think. Are you a millennial? I don't know if
I'm an elder millennial.
elder millennial. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a millennial too. I think I'm almost on the cusp. I was born in 90. So
86.
you weren't born in the 80s?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So you're like on the cusp, kind of.
Oh, yeah.
But it's hard. So there definitely is a generational gap. So taxing the rich.
Mm.
Go. Yes or no?
Absolutely. I
Okay.
mean, when it comes to taxation, right now, you figure that, the tax brackets, I think I'm in a tax bracket of about 36%. And, that continues to go up, but it only goes to about 45%, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
And everything I do is a service or production based. Capital gains is not production based. That's just what happens from buying and selling and trading and, interest amounts.
Mm-hmm.
That caps, I believe, at 20%.
Hmm.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
So we're heavily taxing production, which actually has value, but we're not taxing things that are just money that happens. And there's no such thing as free money is this statement that's made a lot, but that's not entirely true.
Yeah.
There is very much free money. It is just in dividends and in tax breaks, and it
Almost
flows
like
very
it's
much
in
up and
private
up.
taxes instead of public taxes.
Right, right. And you gotta tax fairly across the board,
Mm-hmm.
or this is just going to continue to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And capital gains need to be taxed at a higher rate. There is no productivity in those,
Right.
in that income, and that means that it's of little value. So why not tax the hell out of it? I mean, if you're not actually adding to the situation, if you're just reaping the benefit without sowing anything, then that's of no value. Let's tax that for the betterment of the people,
That sounds good to me.
right?
I mean, we just need more money for the people. We need more. So we need, honestly, we need America to become Denmark or Switzerland or Finland or England or France or Italy or Slovenia or Australia.
I would say that we need to become the America we were supposed to be all along. The
Yeah.
one we were all growing up to believe in, and the one that was kind of stolen from us
Yeah.
in recent years.
Yeah. I agree. And I think a good first step is really just getting people that are not bought in, basically. Hmm. Okay, so I have at least three more questions for you because I don't want to forget these questions because these are questions that people have
Okay.
asked me to ask you. Um, so I think really, oh God, when was Columbine? 1999? 1990? 1995?
It was a long. I remember I was in school, so it was definitely a long time ago.
That was a very, and I know it was in the 90s. That I do know. I think mid to late 90s. So I think it's fair to say in America, we honestly do have a bit of a gun crisis on our hands. And it's
Yeah.
really a bit of a shame that it's happening in schools because it actually even impacted me when I was in school. Um, and so much so that I actually lost one of my so-called best friends to gun suicide,
It's
and
really good.
she was 13. Um, that was by far one of the worst years of my life, but I'm not going to go into all of that.
Understandable.
And there's been even like there were bomb threats and stuff at my high school and gun threats, and it was just. I mean, this was in the late 2000s. I was in high school from about 2005 to 2009. So, like around there. And I guess so. There's a lot of problems, I think, when it comes to the gun laws, and a lot have to do with loopholes. It's how people get them. There's a lot of issues, I think, when it comes to mental health and background checks and things like that. So I guess what would you do to kind of reel in the gun crisis when it comes to schools, when it comes to background checks and loopholes and things like that?
Well, I mean, it's a really big issue, and I don't think it's just around guns. I think it's around our culture as a whole. I don't understand why it's becoming more and more normal um, for kids to shoot other kids. It's. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but school shootings becoming a more and more of a normal thing
Mm-hmm.
is a cultural issue, and honestly, I feel like part of that is because kids don't have a way to release, pent up aggression or anger. They don't have a way to mitigate those things in an everyday environment. We do definitely need, you know, gun laws that let people have guns,
Mm.
that need guns. Those people don't necessarily need assault rifles.
Right.
Um, I don't understand why you would reasonably need, some weapons that are available today. Protection wise, a pistol, that's understandable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you have a rifle and you do clay pigeon shooting or something as a hobby, that's understandable. But those aren't that's where those people that say, hey, don't infringe upon my gun rights, that's where they come from. And then the other side, they come from, we just want something to be done so that our children are protected.
Right.
And it all stems from kind of how we treat children nowadays anyway. And that's, we treat them like, adults should be treated.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, it's a hard thing for me to actually fully talk about because I hadn't really, thought about it in that context. But going back to gun laws, yes, we do need gun reform. Um, it has to be good for all people, though, so that way the Constitution is protected, but our children are also protected. But I really feel that we need to approach the issue from.
Oh, sorry. That was
Well,
the storm. So if you hear a uh, siren-like noise. That's the storm.
Okay.
It's a weird thing that happens in my closet. So I don't know if you heard that or not.
I saw a flash, but that was about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, really, if we really want to do something about it, we need to approach it from a cultural angle and see why school shootings happen. Sometimes school shootings happen because you know the shooter was bullied or picked on or pushed to that limit. Sometimes it's because the shooter might have radical beliefs. Sometimes it's because the shooter may have just decided, hey, it's a good day to shoot people. But changing our gun laws isn't going to affect that. What will affect it is understanding why they're doing these things. I mean, in Las Vegas, it wasn't a school shooting. The man that had just had, automatic weapons and started firing on a group of people. Why did he do that all of a sudden? He was middle-aged. Everybody that knew him said that he was a good guy. And then one day he just snapped and shot a bunch of people. Why is that? I mean, I think that's an existential crisis that we're not really addressing.
I mean, I think it is. I personally think that, like, I like what you said when you were saying about people not necessarily needing access to certain types of guns.
Absolutely.
Because I think that,
I mean, if you're a hunter and you say you need an assault rifle to catch a deer, I mean,
right,
that's the stretch.
right, and I don't think you do. I mean, you need a gun if you want to do that.
You can use a bow even.
Yeah.
I saw him do it.
I mean, you can do all of that. I think that if you want to have a gun for protection, like you said, that's fine. You don't need a machine rifle, I think. But it's good to hear you at least deal with background checks, and it looks like you kind of feel like mental health might be an issue.
Absolutely.
Wow.
I mean, if you can't determine what's right in a situation, or if your version of reality is skewed in some way because of your mental state, then you don't need something that can end life.
Right, and that's why it's good you're for Medicare for all, because then we can actually take care of people's mental health for paying a little bit more. Honestly, paying back about the same, to be completely honest, in taxes, because the difference is right now we have a private tax to the insurance companies, and otherwise it would just be a public tax to the government.
Right. Honestly, we could save money in the long run with Medicare for all.
That's true.
Just because it cuts out all the advertising needs, all the, corporate CEOs and boardrooms. Mm-hmm. We don't have to pay any of those people. We just pay for the care. We don't have to advertise, hire big wigs, none of that. It's just focused on care. So a lot of that disappears in cost.
Right. So
if you ever had to buy a TV ad, like the cheapest ones you can run are probably about $5,000. That's where it starts,
Yeah.
So if you ever see a healthcare commercial, even if it's like for a new, drug coming or anything like that.
All those cracked up ads with all those like people at the very end talking really, really fast, so you can't hear all the bad things about the drug.
Exactly.
Yeah, those commercials drive me nuts. I don't watch TV, but I go to the gym fairly often, and I go to Planet Fitness. And I don't know if you have a Planet Fitness in Kentucky, but at Planet Fitness they basically have 10 TVs at the front, all in front of the machines. And sometimes I'll look up and I'm like, yeah, I'm happy I don't watch any of these things. It's so nice. Okay. So this is actually a question I got from a former congressional candidate in my area. She wanted to know what you thought of the free market.
As per capitalism and the free market,
Yes.
well, um, that is interesting how they work. The free market and capitalism, how it interacts with the government, um, has been really to the detriment of America so far. Because you don't want big business telling you how to live your life. That's a given.
Yeah.
But big business has funded for quite some time that you don't want the government to tell you how to live your life. They want smaller government. But they're pushing that because if the government is smaller, it can't stand up to big business when big business pushes things or wants to do things.
Right.
And it's all based around fear because people are afraid if the government is big, then they'll take advantage of them. But what if the government was big and the government cared? It could protect them from big business.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the truth of it. That's what our forefathers wanted to create, a system
Right.
that could protect people.
Right.
So when it comes to, the free market, I believe in the free market. I think capitalism is,
Sorry.
bless you, is necessary. But I believe that there has to be regulations. There has to be stopgaps. There has to be caps. There has to be things that keep businesses ethical, because capitalism at its heart is for profit, in which, that's how they drive the business. But when you consider what that means, it means making money by any means necessary.
Right.
And that immediately starts to hit on ethics and ethical behavior. So big business isn't really trying to be ethical at its heart. It's trying to be as ethical as it can be to get by and still make profit. And as soon as, somebody blows a whistle on something they're doing that's unethical, they're like, oh, we didn't know that was happening. Let's not do that.
Right.
So yeah, the free market is necessary and it is a good thing, but you have to have the government there to make sure that
there are checks and balances to make sure it's
balances
working for the people rather than the corporation.
Yeah.
And
I mean, if the business is bigger than the government, exactly, they'll buy the government and they'll run the government, which is a bit of what we're seeing right now because of things like Citizens United. But yeah.
Yeah. It even goes further back than that if you think of the Powell Memo, which most people don't know about, but it's actually really important to know about. So I would urge you to Google the Powell Memo.
I shall.
Because it's important. And it would make you sound very intelligent to all of these people that you're going to be talking to at doors, I hope. Because they'd be like, oh, mind blown.
A really good example about how government interacts with the free market is, aspartame, for example. Aspartame, you might find it in diet drinks.
Right.
Drink it yourself. The FDA said no to it twice. They said no twice until Rumsfeld, who had a vested interest in the company that created aspartame, said, no, we need to approve this. And that's why we have aspartame in drinks. The FDA said it was not safe for human consumption. And then it was lobbied to be pushed through. Yes, it's okay to consume.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So, actually, for this part, what I'm going to do, because this is a question, let me see if I have it up. Oh, I do. Okay. I am going to ask you if you would sign, if I can figure this out. Okay. Oh, nope. If you would sign this, and this is TYT's Progressive Economic Pledge, and it has 5 pillars, essentially. Higher wages, Medicare for all, Green New Deal, college for all, and ending the corruption.
I would absolutely sign that.
Awesome.
Um, let me tell you something about higher wages, for example. I work for a company. I'm not going to say their name because I don't speak for them.
Mm-hmm.
But I do hiring, and when it comes to higher wages, when I hire people, they send a starting amount, which is the minimum amount we can hire somebody at, the median amount, and the maximum amount that they will allow me to hire somebody at.
Okay.
And most people will always choose the minimum amount. But you don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say that I support higher wages, I actually put my money where my mouth is. For the last 2 years, if you talk to anybody that I hired into this company that I worked for, you'll find that I hired them for much higher than the base pay rate.
That's great to know, because as much as I want something like a $15 minimum wage, that's still a starvation wage today in most states. So I'm glad to hear that, actually.
I mean, in Kentucky right now, I believe the minimum wage is the federal minimum wage, which is
I think it's something like something an hour.
$7.50 or somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But
even
I
so,
never hire anybody below $12 an hour. Even if they're going to be a cashier, that's $12 an hour.
Yeah.
And if I can get more, I will. I'll pay them as much as I can without getting in trouble.
Right.
I believe in people, and I want them to succeed. And the way that they're going to do that is having what they need. Because if they have what they need, they can give me what I need.
Right.
It's common sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I mean, help me to help you, in the words of Jerry Maguire. Not to be kind of comedic, but I'm a political nerd that likes a little political comedy here and there, so gotta put in some comedy,
Absolutely.
So I'll end with this. How can people find out more about you, and how can people help you win?
Okay. Well, they can follow me on Twitter at Stephen Cox USA. My Facebook is facebook.com/Cox for Kentucky, or Cox for KY, which is COXFORKY. My website is coxforus.com. That's COXFORUS.com. Something that you're not going to find from a lot of federal candidates is my telephone number is on there. If you want to reach out and call me, you can call me. You want to talk about the issues, I'll pick up, I'll answer. If I don't answer, leave a message. Feel free to text me. That's my phone number, my real phone number.
Awesome. That's awesome. So you kind of pulled, not to compare you to another candidate who did this, but you're kind of like a Richard Ojeda who did this.
And honestly, that's the way it should be. You shouldn't have to, if you want to talk to somebody that is running for office or that has the office, you should be able to call them.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, because, I mean, I think that shows that you're going to be truly transparent rather than someone else running who I don't think is going to actually be transparent for a Kentucky Senate. So cool. I guess thanks for coming on my show and responding to my message.
Anytime.
It was great to talk to you about the issues and kind of get into the nitty gritty of all the little shits.
Yeah.
And I say that in a positive light, not in a negative light. But sometimes this politics stuff can get a little crazy. So yeah, thanks for coming on my show. And for everyone watching, I will be linking to his website and all of the things that he said in the video in the description of this video once it's uploaded, and on Twitter, and probably on Facebook as well. My personal Facebook, even though I might do it from the Inform Forums Facebook as well. So yeah, that was it, and thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. Truly.
Awesome. Well, cool. All right, this has been the Inform Forum, and that's it.
Have a great night.
You too.